Now that it's getting darker out in the mornings, it's harder to get up.
Yeah, it throws me off. It throws me off, man. It's I wonder if there's any neutral geographic locations that are agnostic when it comes to shorter days or longer days. I know there's extreme ones in the polar regions, right? Or at least up north.
Yeah.
Like I hear of Alaska going nearly 24 hours of daylight, and then is it also 24 hours of night on the opposite end? Of
Yeah, I think so.
Imagine going to the nightclub, coming out, and it's still daylight. I mean, in Miami, they got 24-hour nightclubs, but
So in July, or between June 8th and July 5th, they have 24 hours of daylight. Um,
I wonder what that
Yeah, it
does.
would be crazy.
I mean, to them, it's probably not, but to someone that is their brain is has adapted to night and day. I wonder like what that does to their psyche, if it does anything. I think it would affect me, especially the nighttime. If it when it's night, 24 hours.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think that would suck. I can't find the same statistic about,
night.
wait, for roughly, 2 months of the year, they enjoy 24 hours a day, 2 hours of sunset. Basically does. Never gets dark. This occurs. Yeah, they only talk about the whole all daylight thing. Wait, yeah, most of it doesn't have 30 days of continuous nights. Parts above the Arctic Circle might. So maybe Alaska wouldn't be too bad. No.
I'm see. You always work for like one company, but I'm trying to help a client that I feel like they're not prepared to be helped, and the the things that they ask me to do require a back end developer to support me in doing it, and there's not one available.
And you don't have.
And it's like, okay, what are your expectations of me? Oh, well, we need you to deliver X, Y, and Z. Well, okay, well, Y and Z relies on a back end developer in order for me to be successful. Yeah, we know that. Okay. I need a dedicated back end developer to be successful. Yeah, we know that. All right, so what's your expectations of me to deliver X, Y, and Z? Okay, I don't have the support or the environment to deliver X, Y, and Z. Yeah, we know that. Okay, like, and I know at the end it's like, okay, they're going to turn the table like, okay, Scott, what do you have for us? I'm like X. So I think I've been doing a fairly good job detaching myself emotionally and not caring as much as I used to. I told you I tried to quit once, like 3 weeks ago. And they're like, can you be flexible? I'm like, okay.
Did and that's an area of the code you can't touch yourself then?
I don't have access to it. I think I could get access to it. It's just if I get access to that back end, I'm going to be held accountable. And it's like the data transfer. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with Swagger. Like, I don't know that much about Swagger, but these generated data transfer structures are hella fat. Like 30, 40 different properties, for a lot of these structures. And half of those properties are nullable. And when I'm making a request, some of these requests to the server, the response takes like 50, 60 seconds. So
Ooh.
I'm afraid of getting access to the back end because I'm afraid of being held accountable for that as well. So there's a little bit of politics involved. And I don't know. I just feel like, damn if I do, damn if I don't. I'm set up for failure.
For Y and Z, is there any way to?
Am I going to collect a check based on net 30 payment agreement? That's what I'm curious about.
For Y and Z, is there any way to just mock out the thing?
That is what I've been strongly considering in regards to, okay, what's within my power. In order to do that, that means that I'm going to have to honestly rewrite a significant part of the client system.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird, right? Because based on personal experience, or maybe even lack of, I used to build applications I still do, off rip, build applications that are web server agnostic, right? So initially I built an application and I just have a test API that serves as a data feed, serves as a server.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll just, once I get that stuff solidified, nailed down, and the various workflows of the application appears to work, then I'll swap out that dependency from that test API feeding my application data to an actual web server. But I found in my experience that if you don't control the server side of things, then you can, the implementation details of that server can influence, if you don't control the back end, can influence the dependencies of the client, meaning that you can easily start handling the responsibilities on the server on the client side, and now you have a chatty client, a fat client that knows way more about the implementation details of the server than they really should. And so I'm saying all this because I've been holding off on just mocking out stuff on the client application, just because I don't want to have to do significant restructuring or refactoring once the implementation details, or once I have a better understanding of what it means to integrate with the web server. And I've been bit by this before, where I get the application done right before it's connected to a web server, and then I realize that the web server, no, regardless of the bugs that log against the web server, the CTO that built the web server isn't going to work on it. And so I have to make the client handle everything that the server really should be responsible for handling. In regards to robustness and making sure that illegal states don't occur. And I'm doing all this on the client side because the server is going to accept anything and everything. Doesn't care. It's a dumb server. And I'm held responsible for building and maintaining a smart client. So
yeah, so it's a CRUD app on the back end is all it is. Might as well just go directly to a database and plop in whatever.
Yes.
Huh. Yeah, which isn't the greatest way to do it.
So like my dilemma, well, it probably depends on philosophy. I think if you have more than one client to that server, then I think your server should be intelligent. If it's just one client, then one or the other doesn't really matter. But then you have to take into consideration, well, if that client application is successful, is it possible that there may be other clients to that server? Or like, I mean, the server is by definition the server. Anything that is successful is going to gain more features and potentially have maybe other applications that solve different business problems.
Mm-hmm.
It's called evolution, right? And so I would think it's probably good practice to put investments into your server in regards to managing states and making sure that it doesn't get corrupted, especially by a client. But who cares what I think? I'm just an application developer. It's not like I get hired to be an architect. No, I get hired to keep my head down and say yes, sir. So that's my frustration.
Well, is the backend stack written in the same language?
My understanding is it is C# and Entity Framework. I mean, I haven't seen it, but I think it was built offshore.
Oh, I was just saying. I suppose you could, deliver the thick part of it, but it is a library that could be exported to their backend. But
well, it goes into how much time, and maybe you've run into this, and maybe you guys are discussing this for the assessment that you guys are doing. How much time does it take to understand and cognitively load the model of that code base and then refactor it based on that model versus, all right, what are their business requirements? And then just write it. Just rewrite it. Like, everybody wants to rewrite, but I feel like it's more time, more investment, and more coupling to try to refactor something that has a lot of accidental complexity than just rewriting it and not having to accidentally couple to other things. It just requires way more effort, I think, to work with a system that has some maintenance concerns sprinkled throughout the entire client. So,
yeah. The other thing is there any way to just structure there should be a way to structure your app so that you put any of that complexity that you think should be server side on the boundary and not in the core app, so you can just remove it once they actually implement it. And the other second part of that is if you do add some extra complexity to the front end that you don't think should be there, but they're not willing to put it on the back end anyways, you're still delivering your code, right? So who cares?
Well, that's the politics of it, is saying, hey, I have this application. I know it's not connected to a web server. That's because the web server isn't ready for me to connect to it. But I'm done with my part, right? And you're kind of like shifting the blame on back end, the back end folks.
Yeah. Yeah, you can prove theoretically your bit's done by just running through a test scenario or whatever.
Yeah.
And then say, I need to change this adapter once you give me actually what you've done.
Yeah, and so that was kind of like the catch-22. It was like, do I really want to start rewriting code, which is going to take time, if I really don't have to, based on business priorities? Business priorities is build an SDK. If I'm building an SDK, the most value is more than likely going to be the data gateway, so that you could pass it to a mobile client, you could pass it to a web application, and they can just use that assembly to pass in the requests and get data back, right? It's all packaged up, throw it inside NuGet. It's there, right? And that's the part where it's like, that's the business priority. Like, that's the first thing that anybody would find useful. Like, forget anything else. Like, that's everybody's going to need data, period. And that's the part that's just not ready. So then it's like, okay, well, what can I do? Well, the things that aren't really a high priority, but if the emphasis or if the motivation maybe for the business is we want the patterns and practices so that we can just stamp out applications, then that means that I would have to rewrite an application based on my philosophy. And then you could copy paste a code base and then adapt it to whatever business domain that you want to accommodate. So it's a catch-22. Like, I don't know. I feel like regardless, somehow I'm not going to do something right. I'm going to make the wrong decision either way. So
isn't that just ubiquitously true about software development? You're going to do something wrong.
Yeah, but tell that to people that own software companies that aren't programmers, which is a paradox, right? You own a software company, but you're not technical.
Yeah.
But you're responsible for the life of the business of a software company. But you don't know what goes into software. You don't know how to build software sustainably. The technical terms that I throw out verbally, you don't understand what I'm saying. It's just, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get fired.
Well, it sounds like you tried to quit anyway, so maybe it's not the worst thing. But, yeah, I don't know. I guess, like I said, in that situation, I'd probably try to put everything at the boundary and build my bit of it and deflect from me. Done with my part, or 90% done. I just need you to fill in the blank.
My knee's messed up still. I tried to go running. I couldn't really run. I don't know if I have a stress fracture. I don't know anything. I just know I can't run. Have you? Well, you don't run, do you?
I've done running before.
Have you dealt with any injuries?
Not really. I have a thing where I don't know. It's maybe at about 2.5 miles. If I'm running like 3, that my shoulder would start to hurt for no reason that I can find. And then I usually have to just kind of like move it a bunch, and then finally it'll come back. It'll be fine. But and then I have shin splints or whatever. But I've never had, as far as I know, a knee go out or anything. So
what exactly is a shin splint?
I don't know. I just assume anytime that my shins hurt that I just call it that. But I think I assume it's just splinters of the bone. But it's just extremely painful to run on the front of your legs. They are pain along the shin bone. Tibial stress. Yeah.
Yeah, mine is on the sides of my knee. And like on my left leg, I could try to squat using just my left leg and everything's fine, but I can't do it on my right leg. It starts hurting once I start bending my knee. The sides of my knee starts hurting. So I'm trying to do cardio. I'm trying to get my blood pressure down. I feel like it's another catch-22.
Just cycling? Does it hurt to cycle? Could you do cycling?
This is me not manning up. according to Goggins. But it's too cold up here for me to cycle. I need to get back to Miami. Then I could swim or cycle. I could do a lot of things instead of run and continue to aggravate my injury.
I just expect you to have a Peloton sitting in your living room. And
What's a Peloton?
oh, it's one of these online. Well, it's
bicycling
it's a
things.
stationary bike, but it's like I think they have online training things or whatever. They had a kind of a faux pas around Christmas last year where they this gal got a Peloton and was like, oh, how good I feel, and and she's already very thin and stuff, and I don't know. They got a lot of flack for it, but I don't know. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different smart exercise equipment that have come out in the last couple of years. Peloton was the first one that I think really started to get traction. But there's like a mirror that people use that'll have exercise routines in it, and then there's one, I think, smart weights or something like that, where it'll have variable resistance. I don't know. It's a cool market, but
They should have a shadow boxing big-majig where you put on a vest. You could virtually shadow box someone else, and then you feel the hits. Of course, it may feel really awkward because there's nothing blocking your punches as you throw them.
mm-hmm. Yeah. The Peloton bike is $1,800 or $1,900. Huh. Well, they have a treadmill too. Sure,
I would think that the bike would be cheap, and you would just pay a monthly subscription for the real-time videos or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. Because I wonder if there's a.
I mean, it's a bike. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I wonder if there's also a monthly fee or whatever associated with it, because
it has to be.
You get 24-hour access to cycling classes, but that's not sustainable unless you're constantly selling bikes. I mean,
well, my understanding was I thought it was real time. It's not like pre-recorded. I thought you were like competing against other people as you're bicycling in these sessions.
Yeah, I think so.
I could see that part being addictive because it's competitive. So,
or maybe they're just trying to get enough monthly cost for Peloton. Yeah, it's a membership fee on top of it. So
I like being outdoors. Like, I don't know, that won't work for me. Yeah, I mean, during the fall and winter, I guess I wouldn't have a choice, but I'm an outdoors person, man.
You don't have to get into cross-country skiing and once the snow falls. And
I'm black. I don't do that.
Oh, come on. Join a hockey league. Or start curling, man.
If it's warm, I don't have an issue with hockey, but I don't like being cold.
Or curling.
When you go, I mean, how often do you go skiing? Curling. How often do you go skiing?
I don't.
I was going to say, like, when you go to these ski resorts, like, I understand that people that look like me are minorities anyway, but, like, do you really see a whole bunch of black folks? You might see some interracial groups, but do you see just straight, like, 5-10 black people at a ski resort? I don't think you will. And if you do, they're not African American. Like, so I don't know. I don't like being cold. You people volunteer for that stuff, not me. I like being warm. So
yeah,
you people.
I suppose.
I'm
What do you
looking at
mean, you people?
I'm looking at the news. I'm seeing like I know CNN is hella biased, but people are bragging that they've waited 11 hours to vote, and I'm like, why are you waiting 11 hours to vote? And why, when you're showing your cell phone video of all you guys waiting 11 hours to vote, all you guys are black? Are white people waiting 11 hours to vote? Because if they're not, I feel like something's going on. Someone doesn't want you to vote, and so they're making you wait 11 hours to do so, hoping that most of you guys will drop off. Have you heard similar stories?
I mean, I've seen the news like you have, but
Do you believe it?
I don't know. It's hard to tell because there's a lot of ways this could be. One, I mean, it could be that. So the way it's presented is that this is happening only to black people, and it's voter suppression. Um, I
If people really are waiting that long
yeah,
in those communities, it has to be. There's no way in United States. We're not talking about like Cambodia or Zimbabwe. There's no way that you can't provide that infrastructure in I don't know, Baltimore
yeah.
or in East Cleveland. There's no way.
But at the same time, when there was primary voting in Wisconsin, which has got a predominantly white thing, I think they had the same problem. So I don't know that it's a
If
racial
they if
thing.
they did, then it wasn't making headline news
It was at the
of
time.
elderly elderly white people waiting 11 hours just so that they can vote. I don't think that would be tolerated at all. I really don't.
And it was because of the coronavirus. Yeah, Wisconsin voters 5-hour lines in the middle of the pandemic. It's not 11 hours, but 5 hours is pretty is similar. It might just be a smaller population cell.
I would I would start. They will probably call security on me after like 2.5 hours because I will start getting agitated, especially being surrounded by a whole bunch of people. If they're not playing music to like keep me upbeat, I'll start getting agitated.
Yeah. So I mean, there's the question of, is this predominantly a black thing, or is that the only thing getting covered?
Yeah,
That's one angle to it, because it could be that this is actually going to happen everywhere. It might be or it might be that more white people are sending in absentee ballots or something. Who knows? There's a lot of explanations a ton of explanations that don't result in some sort of racial disparity. But the other bit of it too is that okay, let's just start with the assumption that there is some sort of racial uh, suppression trying to go on here to actually prevent voting. Then the question is who done it and why? Because there's a definite point at 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 the conservative side to say, well, that they're the ones who did it, but you don't really know that would be the case. There's could be just as many reasons that they want to suppress the black vote on the Democratic side. One is just to actually have the news, but two is that Trump actually has a fair segment of the African American population, compared to at least compared to previous Republican people. So it's not nearly as big as the Democratic side.
You said Trump has a fair segment of African American voters.
Yeah, it's like 25%, which is unprecedented. So, well, at least not
That's
since
who. What's that?
says the was it Rasmussen or polling places or something like that? I don't remember, some sort of thing.
Wasn't it the polls that had Trump down and then he became president? Like that was a lesson learned.
Yeah. The thing is that I just don't. Yeah, the polling stuff is bad, but I think it's just that there's a lot of people who don't answer it, and there's a
Surprised,
lot of people who are afraid to answer it.
I'm
Truthfully,
surprised. I'm surprised he hasn't dismantled welfare yet. He'll do that
okay.
after he gets reelected. Then he'll dismantle that.
No, I don't. I don't think so. I like what has Trump done really that has been against the minorities? Now, take MS-13, what he says about MS-13 out of it. You take that completely out of it, which
Or the
that is
Mexicans
a
are
pretty
coming
bad.
into the United States to rape you or something like that.
Well, yeah, it's MS-13 is what he was talking about
Well, they're El
specifically.
Salvador, right?
Yeah, but they're coming through the border to Mexico. So, but it's anyways, it's
Okay.
Latin. It's anyways, that can be construed like I mean,
I just remember watching a video, and maybe that video was like edited, but I remember watching the video where I think he was at like a church or something, and he was like, "Black people, seriously, what do you have to lose?" I
well,
just thought it was so funny. Like he's that ignorant to talk to people like
well, I think what he's saying there is that you know, um, we're 8 years out of we had 8 full years of Democratic, half of it Democratic control. But with Obama in, and what did that community or your community gain from it?
that. Hmm.
Honestly, what was the gain
So
there?
the answer to your question about what what decisions or what policies Trump had that directly affected underrepresented minorities or poor black folks is recent when we had um, riots going on nationally. I don't know if it's been 3 or 4 months or so. Um, okay, he supposedly maced uh, people protesting peacefully, the right to protest, maced them so that he could do a photo shoot at a church to hold a Bible and have pictures taken of him. He doesn't go to church, right? And then he started screaming at supposedly like Portland, Seattle, a whole bunch of these other cities, saying you need to be tough with them. You need to show them who's in charge. Use force. So he started supposedly sending federal agents to quell the protests, like as if this is like Star Wars, the Empire Strikes Back. And so he's been, and this is my thought process. This maybe not isn't reality, but he's been standing on a platform of law and order with an iron fist, and not really even acknowledging or even preparing a speech for unity on why these riots are even occurring in the first place. Now, maybe he has, and maybe the news outlets haven't published that part. But I mean, I subscribe to Al Jazeera, right? I would hope that they're more neutral than CNN. But the thing is he has a platform to unify, and instead of really identifying and seeking understanding to why these riots were happening are happening, it seems like he doesn't care about the motivation. He cares about being a powerful president, and let's reestablish law and order. Let's keep these people in their place. That's what I interpret. So
See a lot of that though, if you look at it, is actually targeted towards what is perceived as the Antifa segment, which is actually predominantly white. People coming in and doing stuff. The thing I think that, so I'll just give you the perspective from someone who doesn't look at it that way.
okay.
And I could be totally wrong. Just this is just in the way that people in my area see it is that they're the Black Lives Matter stuff, the George Floyd, and then the protests, the peaceful parts of it, which I don't think anybody that I talked to has a problem with. I don't think Trump has a problem with it. That stuff started off as a very, legitimate thing, and has been and continues to be very legitimate, right? That's the thing. Then there's what we perceive as a hijacking by the mostly like the people who are actually trying to take down. It's like a very communist whatever. Anyways, there's a hijacking by mostly white people to cause chaos and to actually bring in this stuff. I think, and so that's bit the rioting and looting part of it. That bit, I think, nobody wants that. Everybody wants peaceful protests, right? Let's just say that it was 100% peaceful protesting, no rioting, no looting, no shooting, none of that. I don't think there would have been any talk from Trump regarding law and order. We got to shut this stuff down.
But there has been talk by Trump even before that happened. And that's my point. That's a lot of people's point.
But there was rioting and looting from day one, though. I mean,
there wasn't.
There was.
No,
mostly after dark.
On day one, there was not. Right?
Yeah, or not day one, day two.
No, on day two there was not, because 2-3 years ago, Kirkpatrick, whatever his name is for Seattle, he was the one taking the knee. Right? He was the one that was peacefully protesting. And what was Trump's response? He called him a SOB, and the NFL was weak for tolerating that. He shouldn't even be in an NFL, and that was peaceful. That was people using their status, their prestige, and peacefully taking a knee in protest of how African Americans are treated in a country that's supposed to be equal opportunity, right?
Yeah,
and that's what a lot of people are tripping on. It was peaceful.
Yeah, but there wasn't.
Still had issues with that.
He didn't call out any sort of National Guard or federal agents to go out there and mace Colin Kaepernick. He expressed an alternate view, which is shared by a lot of people, which is that there's a patriotic element to the national anthem, and let's just say, just maybe put yourself in the shoes of, let's say you had somebody who, and I'm not saying Trump was this way, but you can understand that there's a huge segment of the population that would see that as hugely disrespectful to, let's say, soldiers or someone who died, and that's something that they strongly identify with. You could see that kneeling could be construed as disrespectful to
people that don't know any better. I could see that.
Yeah, but the thing is we all have different experiences, and we all see things differently.
This is true.
Yeah.
The thing is there's people like me that believe that the soldiers that died, they didn't die for me. They died for you, right? They died for your opportunities.
Sure.
Right? No, Scott, the Civil War, right? Okay, the Civil War, people were drafted on both sides, right? And the white folks, the Union, right? Those people, they I'm willing to bet the majority of them didn't die for me, right? They died for Lincoln wanting to reunite the United States and say, hell no, you Confederates aren't going to separate. No, we're staying together from coast to coast, right? And okay, I understand it's north and south, but I mean that wasn't.
But there's plenty of people
that. So people might think like, yeah, you think about all the wars, World War II, Vietnam, Korean War, etc. Like these people died for our freedoms. No, that's a narrative. They died for the United States special interest. All right, we'll just call that out.
Regardless of the way that you feel about that or what you think of it, is that there's a huge segment of the population that thinks otherwise, including Trump, is the thing. And he's not distinct. He's not like the only guy who thinks that out there in the world. It's a huge segment of the population, also, including plenty of African Americans, especially soldiers and stuff like that. But the thing is, and that's okay. And that the thing is, like I said, he didn't go out there and actually, send out the National Guard to collect Colin Kaepernick. That's not, that's just a pure expression of different views, and
Here,
it was peaceful on both sides. So what is there to be and why do you think it was really targeted at black people? I think if a white guy had done the same thing, he would have been just as pissed off about it. It's to him. I don't think that's a race thing to him. It's very, very much a patriotic thing, and he's very much pro-American.
No. Trump, pro-American.
Yeah.
It's weird. What's the definition of American? We know
that's the thing is there's subjective, fact,
right?
Yeah, there's subjective experiences though. Is in his mind, that's what it is.
Here, in my mind, Trump cannot identify with the black struggle. Pure and simple. Okay, he can't identify with a nation that claims to be of equal opportunity, equality for all, but demonstrates something completely different. This is what Malcolm X's platform was talking about. This, how he has more respect for a racist that is truthful about his motives and his actions than someone that poses to be peaceful, that tells the United Nations or tells the world that, hey, we're going to be a model of society. This is how you treat people. This is what it means to be humane. But behind the scenes, your prisons are predominantly black. People are getting pulled over because they're black, and then they're fishing for a reason for what can stick. Like, that's not the white experience. That is the black experience. And what is human behavior is that policies are only created predominantly from fear, right? It's not the boycotts in Alabama that were led, or in the South that were led by Martin Luther King. It wasn't because it was peaceful protests. It wasn't. It was because finally cameras were fixated on white cops and white folks beating down black people as they were peacefully marching, right? That was the violence, right? That caused reform. It's always fear that spears new policies. This is what the quote unquote terrorists, you could call them freedom fighters, right? That's what they embrace, because they understand that politicians or laws aren't going to just change because the Palestinians say, may we please have our land back. They change when cafes start getting blown up. They change when airliners start going down. They change when people say, stop this, we're scared. And finally, reform occurs, right? It took many American cities for a week or two to go up in flames for Congress to really start taking seriously police reform. That's what it takes. I'm not talking to you specifically, but for white America, period, don't blame violence, saying it's unnecessary. I'm saying blame yourselves for letting it get to this point that this is what it takes for reform to occur. Prove me wrong, right? And that's not an attack on you. That's an attack on the human psyche and what it takes to really start taking things seriously.
But the thing is I still don't gather. I mean, you bring up a lot of concerns that I hear, but how to ascribe that to Trump specifically, I don't get the connection at all.
Trump is supposed to be presidential material, right? He's what he's supposed to do is he's supposed to take this event for what it is, perform root cause analysis on why it's occurring, and use it as a platform, right? If he were a stoic, he would use this as a platform to bring people together, to unite them. He hasn't done that.
And the thing is okay, how would you suppose he does that?
Okay.
There's a huge belief, false belief, that he's this excessively racist fascist dude. And I think that if you look at his actual actions and his record, there's very, very little, if any, signs of that. There might be some misogyny there, I could see that. I could see that being an actual possible like charge against him based on some of the stuff that happened before he was president. But
Proud Boys, stand back, stand ready, or something to that effect during the presidential debate. Okay.
yeah, the clip was that he says, "Will you denounce them?" And he wants to know a specific, "Who do you want me to denounce?"
And they
And he
said
said,
specifically
"Stand
white
down."
supremacists.
No, he didn't. He didn't.
Okay.
Chris Wallace didn't say the KKK. He didn't even say Proud Boys. I think Joe
He said white
Biden.
supremacists. That's what he said.
Yeah, to start. But then the thing is that he's on many occasions, even to Chris Wallace, denounced white supremacists directly. He's answered that question before directly.
I know he's answered that question before. I've seen clips that CNN doesn't want to air in which he's denounced white supremacist groups.
Yeah.
I understand that. What I am saying, and it could be my ignorance because the news outlets don't show it, I'm aware of that, is that he's not using this as a platform to address the problem. That's my issue. And I think that's the issue that a lot of people have with your president. Right now I'm attacking you. But it's serious. He's not. It feels as if, based on the news that we're receiving, that could be just not legit, that he's not taking this as an opportunity to really understand what the issue is. He's behaving as Star Wars Empire Strikes Back and saying, no, use an iron fist and let's get these people back in order. And he's not understanding that as president of what's supposed to be the United States, that this country is more separated than ever. And it really is.
But I mean, at the same time, let's just say that you are on let's just say you are a peaceful person and you're sitting in one of these cities and you know, this isn't your reality and suddenly your shop gets burned down. And your entire livelihood just went up in flames because of a riot. You know, the cafe blown up, you lose a kid, a wife, a husband, whatever, what you talked about earlier. That kind of thing, there's a voice for that too. And I don't think that that's distinct from, you know, that's not a black and white thing. There are plenty of people that are black that don't like rioting, and this, proclaim this isn't about them, whatever. Peaceful protests, fine. Let's just say, do you think that there would be this law and order focus in this if there was no rioting, no looting, no shooting, nothing like that? There wouldn't be, but there still could be disruption to commerce in terms of preventing people from getting places. It doesn't have to be violent. And I think that there's a lot of people who don't want violent protests. They don't want that stuff. And that's what definitely, everyone who looks on it from the perspective that this side has, they look at it and they go, yeah, that stuff needs to be shut down. And they don't want to see that stuff. But now you're saying that it's catalyst change.
Yes.
But it's also, it might not be. Like I said, why is it that we're how long ago did, what is it, Ferguson? Is that where, how long is it during the, how is that stuff not fixed now? If Trump is the problem, how is that stuff not fixed already? And a lot of this stuff Trump can't do anything about. He's suggested you should do this, but it's a lot of it is the governors and local officials that have the capabilities to shut this stuff down.
It depends on if you view it as a national security issue.
Yeah, which it isn't. So
to who?
It's not viewed. Well, it's not. Or
people that look like you.
Well, no,
you can look at it in different ways. That's what.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. It's the same movie, different screen. That's what we call it. For what people call it. It's like, it depends on what attitudes you have towards stuff. But the thing is too is that I think Trump has got a huge segment of the actually, comparatively, not overall, but comparatively, he's got a fair amount of approval rating in the black population because he's actually done some good things, right? the prison reform stuff.
I don't know
That's
about prison
positive.
reform. I know that I thought he extended. He did something with historically black colleges.
Yeah, like 500 million or something like that for 10 years. They're whatever. He's really on the school choice, thumping the school choice bandwagon stuff, which is important to a lot of people. Because school choice could definitely, if you don't have to send your kids to this particular institution that sucks in the middle of some democratically controlled city, there's probably a lot of benefit to that. But I don't know. I don't see, like, you have to understand that there's a lot of people that don't see the world in these terms, but would completely be sympathetic to the plight of people, and they don't want to see cops standing on people's heads and necks and choking them out. There's a lot of people I know that are white that have problems with cops for the same reasons that black people have problems with cops, but it has nothing to do with long-standing systemic racism, or they don't describe it to that. It's just the fact that that cops can be dicks at times. I mean, that's just the way it is. And that's true of white areas too. We have a lot of people that get harassed.
Here's the difference, right? And maybe this is where you can correct me, right? For the record, not digging deep into your personal matters, you have a son.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a plan to sit down with your son and discuss that whenever your son encounters a police officer due to being pulled over or being approached, what the protocol for your son is when that happens? Has that ever dawned on you? Is that something that your father, I'm not sure what your family situation is, or whatever male guardian that you had, have they ever had to sit down with you and have that talk about how your interactions with the quote unquote authorities should be, and make sure that you don't excite them, make sure that your hands are always visible, make sure you always have to ask permission to move even when they request you to provide them with something? Have you ever considered that?
Yeah, I've considered it for myself. I haven't had my dad tell me, but I think about that. And if I get pulled over, what do I need to do? Because the thing is that you don't understand. There's plenty of people in white areas that are methed out, that have just as much inclination or probably more to try to grab guns and shoot people. There's a lot more guns probably in these areas too. But and so cops approach, it depends a lot, I think, on what kind of vehicle you drive, I'm sure, and what vibe you're giving off. But there's plenty of cops that approach cars just as cautiously around white people because of methamphetamine and drug use.
No, cops do not approach senior citizen white folks asking them,
definitely not.
Do you have any weapons in the car? Right?
Yeah, definitely not.
Like, whose car is this? They don't.
Yeah, they might if they look methed out though.
And everything is based on cop stereotyping. They look at the skin color, they look at the age, and then they provide questions that are specific to that particular stereotype, right? And so, and that's my point. Like, they're not. That's not
unique to black people though, is what I'm saying. It's not.
I think it occurs more with black people.
Yeah,
it does. Right?
Yeah, within black areas, I guarantee you that there's less black stops in this area because there's just less black people overall. There's a lot of, actually a fair amount of methed out white people though, that cops are just as scared of and just as willing to stand on the neck of someone for.
When I go to traffic court in a predominantly white city, the people sitting on the court benches are predominantly black. I've had this conversation / argument with several people, and they say, "No, Scott, you're just viewing it in an effed up way." And it's like, I'm not. You can't tell me that in a predominantly white area, when I go to traffic court, majority of people are black, That is not profiling. You can't tell me that white people just most of the time don't have any driving issues. They drive perfectly. They never go above the speed limit. They always stop completely. You can't tell me that, because I see how people drive, period, and it goes across the spectrum.
Yeah.
Right? And that's my argument. It's like,
let me just be clear. I'm not saying that that's not a problem. I'm saying that that is a problem. I mean, obviously it is a problem, but I don't know that it's in terms of killing people and cops being jerks to certain subsections of whatever. I don't think it's necessarily unique, and I don't think that. And there's also just, I'll give you an example of something that actually happened in town here, that I heard ago, because my wife's cousin's husband is a cop in town, and what some of this backlash can be, and what it actually happens when you get white people involved in this. So there's apparently some gal in town here, some mom was worried about her son, and they happen to be black, and they called the police to do a welfare check on them.
I want to do that.
No, the mother did.
Yeah, I know. You don't want.
Yeah.
Did he have mental issues?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the cop found him and was talking to him to try to get him to the hospital, and he ended up calling the mom, and then they went over whatever. Everything was fine. It was the cop doing his job, and the people being receptive, and it was a welcome situation. The mom wanted to know that her son was okay, and the son was not mad at the cop, not angry at them, not trying to whatever. But what happened was some lady pulled over and started harassing and videotaping the cop and yelling at them to leave him alone and stuff like this. And the cop and the guy and the mom all had to tell that person to shove off and get away, because it was a totally legit purpose, like safety welfare check that they were using the police force in town for. And I don't think we have probably as big of problems as bigger cities, because we don't have a lot of violence and crazy stuff go on in town here. But the thing is that once you get this into the psyche, there's all sorts of crazy white people that will try to take up some sort of mantle and do this stuff. I think that's and try to catch cops and call them out and be warriors for this cause that they see. It's in many ways, I think, that I heard it called the gentrification of this whole thing. Like it's hip to be this warrior in the trying to fight oppression or whatever, and very little of it actually has to do with anything but virtue signaling and stuff like that. So
Joe Rogan said Black Lives Matter is a white cult. it kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah, that's the thing, is that I think that there's these layers of stuff that get built on top of. Okay, so you take the fact that a huge segment of a nearly militant liberal left wing got pissed off because Trump got president, and they're still pissed off, and they think he's a racist, and they think he's all of these things, and a fascist. And then you add on a legitimate concern from the minority stuff, which is this. Yeah, there's problems with blacks and cops. It's been a thing, and we know it, and it was a perfect time to draw attention to it. I mean, in terms of what actually happened after, not that anybody would want it to begin with, but there's a legit cause. But then this whole segment of these really crazy liberal, mostly white people start to try to take that and make it part of their cause and militarize it. And that's, I think, what like I said, the people that I circles I run, or the people that live in the area, the people that aren't getting maybe what your side of it is, or and I mean broadly your side, is because that's what they see. And it's unfortunate because it's a total departure from what it's actually supposed to probably focus on. But I think one of the things is like I said, getting back to all of this, is that there's a lot of layers of problems and complexity here, and I don't think there's anything that specifically Trump. I still don't understand how this goes to Trump in being that he's some sort of, done bad for the black community, and that he's somehow this really racist guy. I just, anybody who looks at it, I think objectively will see that the guy isn't really racist at all. And other than
He
anything
doesn't
that
care. That's what the message is. So you have something that can't be ignored, that's a racial issue, and instead of addressing it to really understand both sides and to figure out how can you like come up with a compromise and accommodate both, right? Making sure that both are being listened to. It appears as if he's not listening to the black side or to the white sympathizers. He just says law and order. I'm the president. I'm being viewed as weak by other countries. Let me establish my reputation as a modeled president, and that's what it comes off as, regardless of what the reality is in the White House. That's the way it's coming off. He's not using this as an opportunity to unite. He's using this as an opportunity to use the iron fist. That's the way it's being viewed, because we don't see it being represented any other way.
But I mean, I think that he did express sympathy for George Floyd and that whole thing.
What sympathy? Did he create some what do you call it? Did he influence some new policy or some executive order that calls for reform at a presidential level? Is this affecting national security when almost every single major city in the United States goes up in flames within like 24 hours? I think that's a national security issue. Was that treated as a national security issue? What is he really doing to incite or promote reform? And I don't think most people agree that he isn't triggering anything. He's not being the catalyst for reform. He's not hearing both sides. That's what most people believe, including myself.
Not most people. It's probably about 50-50 that believe that. The thing is, I think that
people believe that he's causing reform in regards to
no. Well, I think that he has done other good things, like the prison reform stuff. I think was very good. I think he has I think he looks at prison reform with a sober eye. The one thing I wish that Trump would do, and I will critique him on this, is to just get on the bandwagon with decriminalizing marijuana already, because he's not on that. But I think that just has to do with his personal view on any sort of substance or whatever. He doesn't drink at all or anything like that. But the thing is I think that he spoke out on a couple occasions, and support of George Floyd and stuff like that. It's just when what he very much doesn't like, but he can't do anything about.
Yes,
other than what he doesn't like, what he can't do anything about, other than just speaking against it, is the rioting and looting parts of it. Why does the rioting and looting have to be synonymous with the actual protests and stuff? Why can you? Maybe this is something that a lot of people present that are on the other side, is why can't you be for the peaceful protest and wanting to see legit prison reform, but also be just adamantly against the rioting and looting and hate that part, and actually be in and the other thing is why can't you be in support of police in general and law and order in general, but maybe also have a rational argument at some, with people about the actual issues and how to address them. I think, if you look at it, defund the police was probably the worst marketing campaign ever. And I think because anybody who you ask is like, well, defund the police doesn't really mean defund the police. Well, then why call it that?
Because it draws attention.
It's clickbait. Yeah, it draws attention. But if you stop at the headline, if you don't get into it, you have a huge segment of the populations that never get beyond the headlines is a thing. And they think defund the police when you say that, that's what you mean. Not you specifically, but I mean just you in general.
With Black Lives Matter. Well, all lives matter, right? It's the same thing.
It's a marketing problem. Is really what it is. It's like, and I've tried to sit back and how could you actually frame that in a way that makes it what it is, or like draws attention to what's important. Because I think like I said, there is an important thing there, and there is a lot of agreement that everybody, like all Americans, can have if you could just get over that initial top layer of angst and disagreement. Like, I don't think anybody, like I said, if you look at the actual incident itself, the George Floyd, nobody was coming out except for maybe racists or whatever, saying like that was a good thing. Nobody. I don't know anybody who was like, oh yeah, that to George Floyd dying, that was good, or anything. Nobody. So you took something that had near universal agreement, and somehow it got ballooned into something that really divided everyone.
And why do you think that happened?
And why do I think that happened? Yeah. Like I said, I think that a large segment of semi-militant left-wingists abducted it and went that route.
That could be part of it, but I don't think that was the root cause. I think the root cause was we were mandated by the county or by the state to stay inside. Thou shalt not associate with other people. We're taking away any outlet that you used to have to blow off stress. You don't have access to that anymore. So people are cooped up in their house with their wives that they can't hate, the children that they don't like, for months.
Yeah.
Right? Not having any outlets, can't do anything, bottled up, more and more frustrated, more and more tense, right? Agitated. The media probably knew what the conditions were for the keg to explode, right? And then they fed us this video. We're so stressed out. We don't have any outlet. We can't do anything. Our government is playing our daddy, telling us what we can do, what we can't do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was a perfect recipe for an eruption. What else is there? I really do blame the COVID experience for why it blew up the way that it did. Right?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's turn around a flame, but it's just too bad that like I said, that the all of this other stuff has to take away from, the because I think, like I said, I think you take this top layer, and if you talk it, we're probably on opposite sides of that. But if you take that core layer, I think that everyone's in total agreement and wants to see, police reform, not defunding police, maybe shifting police funds around. That's another way to think of it. Maybe focus away from militarizing bits of it, and focus more on action. Like the idea of having social workers or whatever, or more training for all that stuff. I think most people can get behind. And if you have real people that aren't trying to just use it for political gains or use it for to advance some other agenda, and if you have people that focus on that, I think you can get near universal agreement on it.
I would say whatever worked for the Jews when they were being ostracized and persecuted, we need to figure out how to make that work for Black folks. That's it. Like they were able to overcome it. They're hated by significant amount of people because of their success. Whatever policies, whatever cultural lifestyles that the Jews had post World War II. Hell, even when the Israelites were delivered out of Egypt, I don't care. Like whatever contributed to their success and their status in the world, what lessons can we learn from them? And how can those investments or whatever policies be applied to underrepresented minorities that tend to fill up the jails, that tend to take a significant percentage or a moderate percentage of welfare? Like, what can we learn from them? And honestly, I don't know enough about world history to really understand why Jews are the exception when it comes to people that were systemically oppressed. I'm not sure if systemically is the right term, but no doubt they were oppressed. They were targeted. And yet I feel like they came out on top. If you go to Cleveland, they own a third of Cleveland. You go to Miami Beach, they own a third of Miami Beach. There's parts of Mexico City that's carved out. And I've never, ever seen a Jewish hood in the United States of America. Ever. Ever.
Did you see that and this is going to be total mischaracterization. Didn't you see all the Jews gathering in the streets to burn the masks the other day? That was a news story. There's actually a large population of Jewish people in New York that took to the streets to burn their masks because they're being prevented from going to synagogue and stuff in New York. And stuff like that. And but yeah, I don't really know what the I guess it's just maybe the will to persevere through it all and continue, and that line of tradition and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, I've never understood how, because Jewish people certainly have, I guess at least Orthodox ones have a very Middle Eastern, but a lot of racism is about the natural inclination of people to like be afraid of or dislike people that don't look like them, right? But that like most Jews can pass off as white, so I never understood like why white supremacists and racists like hate the Jews so much.
I don't know either. I do know that Orthodox believe that they're the chosen ones. That like the whole 12 tribes or whatever it is, like they believe that like God selected them, right? So that kind of conflicts with white supremacy.
Yeah, and it's because it doesn't include the what Jesus did was basically blow that all up and say that, oh no, the Old Testament's not legit. There's a new was it oh crap, I feel like there's a term for it. Yeah, there's a new pact or something with God where he realizes that it's too hard to live. I don't remember the whole Christian doctrine and how it invalidated or augments the Jewish side of things, but I don't know.
I'm sure that Ku Klux Klan, I mean, they're a sect of Christianity, regardless of Christians want to accept that or not. And so I'm pretty sure the Ku Klux Klan will say that the Jews killed Jesus. Maybe that's hence their hatred. So
actually, you know what? I think for the Crusades and stuff, well, not Crusades, but I think there was a huge segment of that actually in history. Is that you're right? The whole, and maybe it's just the decline in militant Christianity that, I mean, there is still. I'm not saying that there isn't still that, but if you look at it broadly, there's not a lot of militant Christian stuff that doesn't also bring in secular. Like they might be predominantly Christian, but it's not because of Christianity that people are fighting in a lot of cases. But what was I going to say now though? Well, that was another thing about the KKK that, I mean, Trump is stated that he wants to make them he wants to designate them as a terrorist organization or whatever, and wants to prosecute them as such. So
I mean, they've been pretty much destroyed where they're not really relevant anymore. But
yeah,
if he wants to, because I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure there clan rallies going on. I mean, probably in Idaho or something. But if he wants to, he can. He, I mean, it was only like maybe 4 or 5 months ago where, and this surprised me, where he designated, for lack of a better term, Mexican cartels. I'm not sure if it was a specific one, like Sinaloa cartel or whatever, but he
mhm.
designated them as a terrorist organization. I'm like, good. Now what?
Okay,
Are you really going to send in special forces to Juarez and in rural areas of Mexico to eliminate them? That's pretty ballsy, and that's, I mean, ballsy when it comes to like the Mexican like authorities. Like, how does
yeah,
that play out? Because you're going to kill innocent people. You are. So how's that going to play out with Mexican authorities when you do take the lives of innocents for I don't know. But I don't think. I mean, they probably have begun operations, but I feel like we would know about it by now in Mexico.
yeah. I don't know. Maybe there's something in the U.S.-Mexico trade agreement, Canada-Mexico.
Unless they're wearing Mexican uniforms and doing it.
Yeah, and I don't know why I didn't hear about this earlier, but the whole, or I just heard the term yesterday. This platinum plan is what it's called. That's where it was announced about he wants to designate the KKK and Antifa as terrorist organizations. Both of those organizations, although I think there is an Antifa organization, but it's also it's not centralized. It's kind of a mix of
Well,
stuff.
something tells me that the only reason why he included KKK is because he really wants to designate Antifa, and so to quell arguments of why are you doing Antifa but you're not doing white supremacist groups, that he would say, okay, I'll do KKK. So I think it's a political move.
Yeah, but
Actual,
it was tied in with a bunch of other stuff because yesterday was a trending arrest the police or sorry, arrest the president was trending yesterday on Twitter because apparently Ice Cube, who wrote that song, was working with the Trump administration to define what the platinum plan should be. And that's where I actually first heard this platinum plan term. um, it's just odd to think. Oh wait, he clarifies his role. Okay. Yeah. Anyways, like I said, I think that other than maybe how you handled this, how he handles this George Floyd thing and the protests and not doing enough to address the legitimate portions of it, which again I don't think are I just the looting and rioting just overshadowed the whole damn thing is what happened. I just don't see what Trump has done that's again been anything but good in terms of substance. Between the opportunity zones, between the like I said, between the opportunity zones, the prison reform stuff, and just his views in general. It's hard for anyone to, at least that's on my persuasion to see that. So I don't know. It's weird, dude.
well, I don't know. I like to ask the question of, do you think Trump really serves America, or do you think Trump serves people like you? And same thing with the police. Do the police really serve their jurisdiction, or do they serve white people or middle-aged white people? Like, what is their allegiance to? Is it really to America for what it is, in which it's a rainbow spectrum of people? Or is it first class citizens since the colonization of this territory? And honestly, I still think that it's all subconscious, right? And I think that by default, subconscious, they're they're not protecting and serving, with emphasis on serving Americans. There's still tiers to what an American is: first class, second class. And that's just my personal opinion. And it's going to continue to be issues as long as people continue to be treated differently and not equally.
Well, yeah, there definitely is going to be issues going forward. It's the truth of it. But I mean, to your question, does Trump serve America or not? I don't know that things are entirely black and white in terms of, and I'm using the colors there, not the racial connotation. In terms of what he serves or doesn't serve, I do think that in what I see and what I think is that he clearly loves America conceptually. I don't see that he makes distinctions. I just don't see the racial distinctions and saying, oh, it's just white America. I know that that's the narrative that's being tried to ascribe to him, that he's this racist guy. He doesn't give anyone, that he only cares about white people. I just don't see that. Like, I don't see why he'd be so focused on. Yeah, he serves himself a lot. He likes the rallies. He likes the respect that the presidency gives him. And do you know what? If anybody really hates Trump, the biggest person who's probably responsible for him is Barack Obama, because he embarrassed him one day in one of these press conferences. Did you ever see that?
No, but I know he wrote back everything that, or most of the things that Obama finally got set up. Trump came in and started repealing all that stuff.
Well, we'll listen
to the climate change or whatever that Paris Agreement was. Like, he just started terminating all that stuff. So yeah, I would be upset too.
Yeah, no. But the thing is, and I guess we got to probably close it up here. But in was it the White House Correspondents' Dinner? Obama and I think Trump was there, and this was when Obama was still president. Obama made some sort of joke where he read one of Trump's tweets where Trump said that Obama would go down as one of the worst presidents or whatever. Whatever. That's not the point of it. But and then he said, at least I'll go down as being a president of the United States. And then that was a big, ooh, to dig on Trump. And there's a lot of people that have identified that as the moment where Trump decided he'd be president and he would do whatever it took to get that. And so I think if you took that out of it, and if Obama had not made that joke at that exact moment, I think that would have you wouldn't have seen a Trump presidency, I'm sure. But maybe.
So blame Obama.
If anybody wants to, yeah. But like I said, I just don't see anything that I just look at the actions, not the rhetoric, but the actual actions that Trump has taken, the actual policies he's enacted, the things he's cut, or the things that he supported. Like, just take away all of that top layer that I talk about, go down to the core layer. What has he actually done and accomplished, or things that he said? I just don't see like this stuff, this core stuff, indicating that he's particularly against Black people, or that he's done anything that's really been against really anyone. Yeah, I just don't see it.
You don't see what he has done to be against, which is different from you don't see what he has done to be proactive.
Well, no, I see proact. I see for. I definitely see for.
Okay.
I just don't see what he's done to be against. So I see stuff like the Opportunity Zone support, the criminal justice reform support, and signing that stuff in. I see some of the sentences he's commuted and stuff like that. You know, I see stuff like that, and it seems like if you just took away all of this stuff up here that is focused on that makes Trump and just focus on the substantive bits, there's nothing he's done that and there's stuff that he's done that seems like it's in the right direction. And there's nothing that seems to go the other way that goes against it. Again, taking away all the rhetoric and all of the media and all of the narratives and just looking at literally what has he signed into law and what has he done executive orders on and who does he talk to, and what has he been focusing on?
I think he would be more successful if he introduced an executive order where news outlets would be suspended if they clearly had knowledge of fake news and aired it anyway. That's how he would get back at CNN and close them down.
But he can't.
Yes, he can.
No, he can't.
Yes, he can. There's freedom of the press, but we all know that free speech is something that has conditions, right? So
yeah, but he can't. But that's for the law to. That's for the courts to unpack and stuff like that.
You can create an executive order, and then it could take another 6 months to a year for the courts to undo it.
No, he can't. I don't think, and he wouldn't. Is the thing. And he wouldn't is the thing. You know, if you look at it, and
you banned CNN from coming to a press conference before. Well,
yeah, to the White House press conferences.
Yeah,
that's something, but that's within their control. That has nothing to do with. He could also say you're not allowed to come in the Blaze.
Why can't you do it?
What
is he doing to TikTok?
Well, that's a foreign-owned entity. That definitely does fall probably into the purview of it's like an import-export thing.
Okay.
And I don't necessarily agree with that approach. I don't know what TikTok would be stealing from. I don't see the national security implications of TikTok and WhatsApp.
Anything with, I don't know, it's not Yahweh. Yahweh is like another name for Jehovah. Whatever that company is, it was a Chinese device manufacturer or phone manufacturer.
Huawei or whatever. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
The issue was that the data would be held and mined, for lack of a better term, by the Chinese government, and that's no secret. And the United States wanted to protect intellectual property and also protect its citizens from Chinese influence. And well, that's basically it. He wants that data that's being generated by American citizens to be filtered by the United States government and not by the Chinese government.
Yeah.
To be mined by the United States government and not the Chinese government. So I think that is the reasoning or the motivation for banning these platforms that have hundreds of millions or even billions of users, is because the United States doesn't want that information to get into the Chinese authorities' hands for them to influence it. They want that information. They want to be controllers of it. So,
yeah. Well, I guess it's a different story because it has to do with the entry of a foreign like entity type thing, and they do control that kind of stuff. Like, let's say, going in and out of Iran too. Haven't you ever had those agreements or whatever, or those things where it's like you can't share cryptography with Iran?
Well, they shut down GitHub.
You've seen that from a tech, yeah.
The United States restricted GitHub to Iranians.
Yeah, I think one of the games.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, and it's U.S. policy or whatever. But
I don't think Europe
yeah.
produces anything useful technology-wise, Roman. I'm sorry. I don't know if is there anything that is like iconic within the last 20 years that Europe has produced that's for mainstream consumers. I can't think of any. No, I can't think of anything. I mean, they create what's this the speed triple. I mean, motorcycles, but like Europe doesn't really produce anything that has really dominated the world. Yeah, Americans and Asians are just better at that. So that's it. That's my ignorance right now. So.
That's just because you're racist against all the white Europeans, man.
I'm racist against everybody. So I'm racist against black
Aren't we all though? We all are though.
Different from people in the north.
We all are. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's implicit bias and stuff like that. We can't even control it. All you can do is recognize when it happens. But
I feel like you don't have to go to work.
I sort of do.
Okay.
I can kind of shift some of my time around lunch or whatever. It's just I have nothing pressing this morning that I'm like I got to get off and get to. My kids are at my sister-in-law's, so just kind of a chill morning. This is much more fun to talk about than looking at documentation for the next 4 or 5 hours.
Is that wrapping up soon?
No. We're at the end of week 1 of what's supposed to be like a 6-week deep dive type thing. I think we're getting some access to some systems and stuff, so we can really start to dig in and try to. You know what? Actually, let me get your opinion on something. I was thinking about the terms that we use in software, and why is architecture used to talk about system, like broad system, instead of like geography? Why don't we use geography as a term? You never hear about the system geography being used as a metaphor for what it is.
No. Did you look up the definition of geography?
Well, yeah. I couldn't recite it to you.
The study of places and the relationships between people and their environments.
Yeah, and if you extended that to system, people, environment, systems, seems like the metaphor. I mean, versus architecture's
environment. Yeah, seems like it maps well.
Yeah, in structural, but it seems like there's a lot more about to do with interrelationships and the broad spectrum of stuff, nature of software or whatever, where geography just seems to fit, especially when you get into services, like a structure, like an application could have architecture, but then is architecture really a between many different systems? It's like the metaphor seems to fall apart.
Well, no. Well, maybe. Architecture is an overloaded term. And so some people believe that architecture means decisions that are hard to undo. And so, yeah.
Sort of, Roman, to answer your question, I started on a contract where I'm doing an assessment. So I took a shift from my other contract, which has been a good change. But anyways, back to the substance here.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think of architecture as things that are hard to undo, but it's an overloaded term. Like, because I think some people will say our architecture is, and they'll start naming tools that they use, right? And there's people that believe that, well, everything is architecture, right? Everything.
Well, sort of. Yeah.
It is. Like, when I say everything, I'm talking about in regards to software systems.
So, like, the definition of architecture is the art or practice of designing and constructing buildings, the complex or carefully designed structure of something. But I don't think that.
All right, fine then.
The design portion of it isn't. I don't know that there's really a lot of design going on in architecture. I think it's a lot of reactive stuff.
But
Like in software architecture, I mean.
but my argument is I can take this right here, okay, and it's a
Mhm.
puzzle box with a Uno box on top of it. I don't know what this is. I don't know if this is lip gloss. I don't know what this is. But this could be architecture for a cockroach that decides to go inside that box, right? I mean, that's probably a very, very poor example. But I guess what I'm trying to say is architecture isn't something that you have to plan. It could just be something that exists that's being used, period. Whether it was designed, whether it was carefully designed or not, if it's in use, then that is the architecture of it.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe it's the way that I'm thinking about it right now, because we're looking at an assessment where we're actually just studying something. We're not actually trying to create something at this point. And so geography maybe fits much better into that term because it's, the study of physical features or whatever like that. And the terminologies match up, right? We talk about like a map of the system and stuff like that, and the channels and so these are like geographic terms. But then when you actually get into designing or developing something, I don't think there's a lot of architecture that really goes on anymore.
Well,
It's more of a study of and then making a decision based on
we could really
that
spend
study.
another hour talking about this.
Yeah, sorry.
No. I mean, I'm okay because like I'm gonna get fired anyway. So here's the thing: like, you study how ships are built. Okay. Well, here's a. Have you read the book Release It?
No.
You should read that. Okay. You should also read the book Writing Software if you haven't read that by Jabal Lowy. Release It is by, I forgot the person's name. His face is in my mind. I can't remember his name. Those are really good books, right? You think about a boat's architecture, okay? You think about the Titanic. You think about modern cruise ships. You think about naval carriers, right? Or aircraft carriers. Those are planned architecture. They plan failure into the system. So if someone decides to ram their raft full of explosives into that ship, they have, I don't know if you want to call it bows of the ship, but they have areas of the ship that are segments that can be inundated with water, but the ship will still float, right? Mm-hmm. They'll just, like you're watching those movies, they'll just close the hatch and the ship is still operational, right? That is architecture. Why am I bringing up that? Because the architecture for systems, some would argue, especially when it comes to resilience engineering, is you want to mitigate ripple effects across the system. I don't know if you noticed yesterday, but Twitter was down for a couple hours. I'm not sure what it was. I'm not sure what the root cause of it being down was, but I do know that, and I can't think of a really good example right now, but there could be within a system an area that fails, and because of that one area, it completely obliterates the rest of the system through a ripple effect. Mm-hmm. And that's where architecture could come in at, where you can build a system as maybe connected vaults in which if something occurs that wasn't planned, that it's still contained, just like a ship, right? You blast a hole in that ship, well, the damage is still contained and it doesn't affect the other parts of the ship. You still want to fix it, but it doesn't bring down the entire system. The reason I say this is because the word architecture can be overloaded. And what does it really mean? It can mean a set of decisions that are very difficult to reverse, or it could mean it could mean resilience engineering and containing issues that shouldn't bring down the entire system. It can mean architecture. Some people say architecture is just, SQL Server, Hadoop, Web API, and they're just saying vendor tools, right?
Yeah. It just seems like when we talk about architecture nowadays, it has very little to do with thoughtful design of a system. Not all. There are definitely there are definitely architects in certain software fields that are doing stuff, and I think that people who are writing their code, or people that are probably just regular software, they're doing a lot of architecting when they're thinking about how to set up their app and stuff like that. Like you do it, like when you talk about, that you put stuff on at the boundary, and this is what goes into your domain, and that's all architecture of your app.
Well, it looks like Roman is onto something. It looks like architecture just doesn't fit to describe a system. It's there's different aspects of an architecture, right? So
Yeah.
there may be a resilience architecture. There may be a, I don't know, vendor architecture. There may be a UI architecture or data architecture. It sounds like that's what it really is. You can't fit everything into one bucket and then call it architecture. You have to explain the different dimensions of it.
But when you're looking at what I think what I was getting at is, when you're looking at a system, a set of applications, working in concert, the chances that system is probably, at least within business, been carefully designed is probably very little, which making it calling it the architecture of the system is it seems wrong, unless it was designed. Because I don't think it was, like, architecture implies a certain amount of design, like upfront careful design, and I think that most software systems now are a lot more emergent and natural than that, where geography probably comes in. Yeah.
I mean, but to design, in your words, carefully design an architecture probably means that you're not going to have a product until like a year later or more.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is it's not done.
You carefully design a nuclear submarine.
Yeah.
That submarine isn't going to be built for another 5 years because the paperwork and like
validation and all that. Yeah.
You first have to carefully design security, right? And then you have to, your QA has to be carefully designed, right? The various forms of testing has to be carefully designed. Like, that's what architecture is. I mean, it's everything really, depending on how it's going to be used or abused.
Yeah. Maybe what I'm getting at then is that outside of traditional waterfall, I don't think architecture holds and specifically apart from an app at a system level, I don't think architecture really holds its weight as a term anymore. It doesn't describe well. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I have just such a, like, there's certain things that they do that I think are valuable, but a lot of architects just aren't doing those kinds of things.
You know what, that
I need to be involved in this, and I need to make decisions for you because I need to feel important.
So here's what both of our conversations, or both of the topics that we had in this session, have in common. If you really want anything to change, you have to kill off the people that are fighting for it to be status quo. And that's like anything in life. You have to wait for people to die in order for new ideas to propagate and become mainstream.
Yeah.
I really believe that. Well, am I really advocating murdering people? No. But I'm saying that just based on society, if you really want change, you have to rely on people dying off and killing off their influence from reaching future generations in order for change to really occur. This is why wars occur, because the people aren't willing to let go of status quo And in order for change to really occur, whether it's communism, whether it's, I don't know, keeping the union together, like you have to, someone has to die in order for this interest, or in order for this change to really to happen. So
Well, yeah, then you get into the broad nature of reality, and that yeah, you need to, this stuff builds out over generations. Ideas do. I don't think you're espousing any sort of like you should go kill people, but
kill Democrats, right?
no. But there's definitely an evolutionary component there, though, right? If you think about it, actually, like I can't remember what the book is, but there's a book out there, and I think if you look up, oh gosh, I can't even remember her name. I'm not even gonna try to remember names, but there is like a fundamental, like internal difference between people who identify as liberal and conservative. Like there's things that they value, and this maybe gets into why Trump is a conservative in many ways. Is what they value is different at a core fundamental part of their being, and there's probably, and it's like a curve, right? And there's likely an evolutionary purpose for it. So if you think about it, if let's say everyone was hyper liberal and valued exploration and change and doing this stuff, what happens to your species then? And if you look at it, it's, well, they try all sorts of weird plants and they die, or they go too far in one direction and they die or whatever. So there's a positive step, but then there's the conservative side of it, is what happens if you don't change. You don't have optimality. You can't adapt to if your environment goes bad or something like that. There's a segment of society that pulls towards progress or change, and there's a segment that holds towards status quo, and it's about 50-50, which is why there's half of everyone's conservative and half of people are liberal, and there's this huge spectrum, and that there's like a really good, the righteous mind is exactly it, I think. And there's a really good, and I haven't read it either, but I've heard the stuff about it. Roman got the book right, and the thing is there's a perfectly good evolutionary reason for that. You need some people to keep the good things that we have going, and not to throw out anything that we have that's good. And you need a segment to go out and explore new ways of doing things. And then they have a forever an eternal conflict between those two bits, but it's always towards hashing out, is this really progressing us or not? And eventually, progress happens. It's just slow, and nobody sees it in their lifetime, which is really unfair. But one of the good opinions people probably can have is to look at the political system, and everyone thinks it's so broken, but if you really look at it, it's not. It's actually doing a pretty good job.
For who? That's my point.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, you're seeing it from the perspective it's not changing fast enough. But it could just as well change too fast in a direction you don't want it to change. Right? Yeah. I'll give you a really horrible example, and I don't think this way, but imagine if somebody came along and decided, well, the best way to deal with this problem with African Americans and police is to just eradicate them. And if that could be allowed to move really fast in one direction, that's bad, very bad.
That's what probably an AI run country would do.
Yeah. So it's a good thing that you have a subset of the population really trying to push a certain agenda in a certain way, and and there's a good reason that there's a good segment of a population trying to keep things in the status quo or even reverse certain progressions, because it vets it. It vets every change that we make as a society, and it's actually really cool if you try to take a brighter look at some of this stuff. It's really cool. For example, like the climate Paris, the climate change Paris Accord thing. One of the things that's I think Trump's pointed out about it is that regardless of the U.S. being involved in that thing and having like demands placed on them, the U.S. has done a pretty good job on its own, just reducing its own emissions and stuff like that. It's not, just because you're not in that doesn't mean that you're going to stop society from advancing towards that particular end. Like, why do you have to be in it? You're kind of implying that if you're not in it, you're against it, or if you're not in it, you're not going to make progress. That's clearly not the case, right? We're progressing anyways. Companies and people in the U.S., at least of certain persuasions, are making advancements towards that.
What advancements? Oh God, was Trump's campaign not known for reinvigorating or reigniting coal plants, dirty energy, and hey, we know that we want to use low energy light bulbs or LEDs, but no, we need to create more American jobs. We're going to scratch that off. Like, his platform has not been about clean environment.
It's been about but it's not.
No one's going to vouch for that. It hasn't. It's been about America. For the same reason that the Brazilian president continues to endorse chopping down trees to reignite their economy, it's the same paradigm. It's let's live for our generation, fuck our kids, and that's it. And that's what people have issues with, right? So Trump, no, I'll just disagree with you. I'm not sure if this is what you meant, but it's not about we're reducing our emissions. We're not, and if we do, it's very low, because everything is about economy, and we care about our economy, this generation's economy, and we don't care about our kids. Period.
Well, that's period not true, but
okay, I'm listening.
But the thing is that, I mean, it's not true that we don't care about future generations. I think my point was that there's a temperament there when you talk about a back and forth between progress or whatever. If you do take that to an extreme and you do implement certain policies, the economy definitely is going to suffer. And that's going to have other impacts that you're not thinking about. What happens when a bunch of people suddenly can't get jobs? Economic progress allows for a lot of opportunity to do things or to innovate. And having that ability, that's why, companies like Tesla and companies like Microsoft and stuff they have enough time and energy to actually spend on not just surviving, but actually figuring out how to do this, to have, the economy thrive while also being green, whatever. There's a lot of, huge American companies. The ones that can go green, it's a luxury, right? The ones that can be like, hey, we're going to be totally, neutral in all of our emissions and stuff like that, or reverse neutral, or whatever the hell they call it now. That's a luxury.
You don't think that constraints promote innovation? Let me start over. You don't think that constraints promote innovation?
Do I think Yeah, I think they do, but not when it's forced like that. I don't. I think that if people have I think if people have the internal desire to do something and they're given the economic freedom to do it, then people will actualize what they're doing. But if you put people in a situation where they're forced into stuff, and this goes at a micro level too, I think that's why you talk about stuff like universal basic income. I think Andrew Yang was the presidential candidate, and I'm on the conservative side of the spectrum, and I'm actually for that. I think universal UBI isn't a bad thing, because I think it would give a lot of opportunity for people to express and actualize themselves in different ways and get themselves out of poverty and stuff like that.
So let's ask Roman. Roman, if he's still listening, I'm not sure if he was the one that dropped off, but since the European Union has enforced strict emissions regulation in regards to vehicles, hence cars, motorcycles, I don't know about cruise ships, has that stifled the European economies? Now, I know that like Greece and Spain, they've had issues with their economy, but I'm just curious. He seems to be knowledgeable. He refers books to us that are very philosophical that I have no clue about. Curious.
Yeah, but to quote the great Scott Nimrod, nothing innovative has ever come out of Europe in the last 20 years.
This is true, and this also goes into the constraints that they placed on people's data. I had to take. I was forced to take a corporate test after going through a whole bunch of slides on data security and the right for Europeans to have their data collected on servers to be forgotten. And I'm curious if that's why we don't see or haven't observed a lot of disruptive innovation from European countries within the last 10 years. We see a lot of disruptive policies and regulation. And maybe to your point, Sean, maybe that feeds into your argument of stifling innovation when you have constraints instead of what I thought would be creating or promoting innovation. So.
Yeah. Another way to think of it maybe is kind of like this, is that the argument that says that that legalizing pot, if you did it, everyone would be outside smoking crack, is probably the same thing that says, well, if you're not part of the climate change agreement, then you're clearly going to, you're going to be really bad with the climate. It's the same kind of thing. You don't have to necessarily buy into laws to espouse progression towards some sort of ideal. And I totally think this whole fire thing in California is just the stupidest thing I've ever heard of, because it is strictly a forest management issue. If you allow people to go in and clear or do controlled burns and stuff like that, and let the forest fires burn, let the forests burn when they should burn, as they naturally have done for a long time before people started putting out fires, you're not going to have that problem. So I hate that they draw these attention to these sensational things like that in hurricanes and blah, blah, blah.
The issue is you're cutting down the forest, and then the remaining part of that forest that you haven't cut down, you're burning. Oh, by the way, as you're cutting down the forest, you say, oh, there's overpopulation. There's bears and deers that keep eating my tulips or whatever. Oh, yeah, overpopulation. All right. Yeah, you have a license to start gunning down these animals because there's too many of them as you reduce the area that they used to stay in. So it's
forest management's not about that, though. It's about maintaining healthy plant life and ecosystems and stuff like that.
I thought your argument is about let it burn. And my argument is let what burn? What remains of what we already chopped down, let that burn? Is that what you're saying?
No. The thing is I'm not saying, so like there's a forest that's west of us here. It's definitely overgrown. It's due for a burn, and it naturally would have burned, because what happens is trees drop their branches, they die, they collect all around. There's a whole bunch of really bad overgrowth and a lot of fuel just sitting there, and it has to burn at some time. What happens is when a fire comes along and you have all this fuel, if you stop it at its natural point for that happening, which has happened in California, they put out fires, they haven't started them intentionally.
That's the question. I didn't mean to cut you off, but they put out fires caused by who?
It doesn't matter.
It does matter. Do you really think that lightning is causing all these fires? No,
It doesn't matter what the source of it is. It matters about how much fuel is sitting on there ready to go.
So the same argument for the Amazon rainforest, right? Is how much fuel is in the Amazon.
Well, I'm sure that I don't know if the humidity and stuff like that. No, that's a different thing entirely. Because that's about deforestation, which was a different issue.
Okay.
I'm talking about the using the forest fires in California as a see climate change, and see this is why, and this is going to be so bad, and our the sensationalism of our states burning to the ground because of climate change, and focusing only on that as the cause. It's not the cause. The cause is the fact that you haven't let it burn as it naturally should for hundreds of years. And like I said, there's a forest right west of us that is probably going to need to be burned or taken down because it's just sitting there collecting fuel. And so I hate that they try to sensationalize these fires and to twist it to some sort of agenda. But anyways, I don't know, what did Roman say here?
So Italy and Greece cannot devaluate their own currency like they did before the euro.
No, but he's not an economist. European economies suffer from boringness and probably connecting different types of economy types together in Eurozone. Huh.
I bet you Roman's a functional programmer. He seems really smart. Anyway.
What's his symbol on there? Is it like a dragon of some sort?
Anarchy?
No, that's not.
Hold it. Camlor? What's Camlor? Or is that Gamlor? Is that a G? Is that dragon a G? Because my YouTube icon is hovering over it. No, not okay.
Gamlar stream on SoundCloud.
It's when we get to this point of the session where I say, all right, well, that's the end of our So it's been real. I enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, it's fun.
We definitely are polar opposites on many things. So
yeah, but it's all up here. I think you get down here, and there's a lot of in the core of there's a lot of agreement.
Dragon EG. Okay. What's Dragon E? Is that a product?
I'm guessing it's a drag. What he meant is that it's a G shape in a dragon.
No, I think that's his gang name. G is for gangster.
Dragon a gangster. He runs in a gang that plays a lot of D&D. It's a LARPing gang.
Y. What does Y stand for? Yakuza? Is he white, Asian? What are you, Roman?
Stoffel. What's that last name?
That's German, I would think. Because it sounds like Rommel. And I thought Rommel was a general for the Third Reich. Something like that. During World War II.
It's a British Irish name. So
I don't think so. I challenge that.
Well, according to this Ancestry.com site.
Google doesn't know what it's talking about.
Historically, surname, clan affiliation.
Oh, this says Belgian.
Belgian.
Well, there's a Belgian racer named Stoffel. Stoffel's the first name, though. So.
Yeah, Stoffel, Saffel, Stowell, Stoffer, Stoffel, Stoffers. Variations on that name. But that means very little, I suppose. It depends.
He's Anglo-Saxon. Okay. Well, I guess Anglo-Saxon would be wrong because that would mean you're American, right? And you just have German ancestry.
Anglo-Saxon is British with Norwegian ancestry, isn't it?
I thought Anglo-Saxon was. I remember during Emmett Till court case, the lawyers you need to let these Anglo-Saxons off so they get back to their families or something to that matter.
Yeah, they talk about WAPs or white Anglo-Saxon Protestants.
I thought WAP was Italian. I thought that was a derogatory term for Italian. No.
No, wasps. That's right. WAP is, yeah, you're right. That is derogatory. WASP, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. Sorry. No, but yeah, they invaded from Norway or Sweden area. I think it was Norway. The Anglos and the Saxons. They sacked. They pushed out the Celts from Britain, I believe, and overtook the northern part, and eventually pushed out the Romans. And then,
how you know all this? Or are you reading Google?
No, between European history and then just various European history sources, but also there's a lot of TV shows and stuff that are like, if you watch the Vikings, or if you've watched, there's a movie, King Arthur, I think, talks about it.
Okay.
Actually, a lot of the if you look at even like, so in the middle of Britain, there was a giant wall that actually separated Scotland and the actual English, the traditional Celtic English people from the Romans who had come up from and had owned that part of whatever. And that wall was used as the inspiration for the wall that's in Game of Thrones, if you've watched any of that. Or
I refuse to watch.
But there's a giant wall, but that was the source of it. There's a lot of connections there. Yeah. I get pissed about learning about European history, though, because prior to about 1500, or Poland, the Polish-Lithuanian Empire was massive. They actually had a huge presence in Europe. They even they owned like big swaths of Moscow, they occupied successfully. Were occupying Moscow and Russia and stuff like that. So they were a huge empire. But you start European history, learning about European history at the time that they're going to decline. So Poland just seems like this beat on country from that point on. So.
Well, they didn't Hitler overtake Poland in 3 or 4 days or something?
Yeah. The Polish government, after a certain point of time, they had a requirement in their they had a requirement of an absolute majority to get anything done. So all of their worms, or whatever they called them, lords of Poland, had to agree to get anything accomplished. So they had to have 100% agree. So they basically couldn't get any progress done because they all had to agree, and nobody would agree on anything. So they fell into decline. But the Polish Empire, probably the last big thing that they did was stop the Ottoman advancement into Europe. So the Turks basically were advancing into Europe, and they had were sieging Vienna, and then the Polish army, led by John Sobieski, and they had a bunch of Huskers, which are really these really elite cavalry units. They came down and basically fought back the Ottoman Empire. That stopped that empire's advancement into Europe.
I couldn't imagine that. Can you imagine hey Sean, first of all, we're drafting you, right?
Yeah.
We'll kill you if you refuse to be drafted. And when you fight, when you defend our country, or if we decide that we just want to boost our economy by conquest and taking over another territory, you're going to be doing this hand-to-hand combat. We're going to give you a sword. We'll give you a shield, and it's highly likely that you're going to be maimed. You're going to lose a leg or an arm. Your wife will probably leave you because you'll probably go crazy, and you probably won't be able to satisfy her because of your injuries. But, I couldn't do it. So,
sign me up.
The whole hand-to-hand combat of you're literally going to be getting sawed with a knife. I had a knife fight with him. I had a knife pulled on me once or twice, but it never resulted in me being. It's been twice, but I've never actually done hand-to-hand combat with a shank or a sword. I can't imagine like armies going to war face to face and it's like prison fight.
Yeah,
It's like
arrows and all that stuff, man. Nuts.
yeah. Okay, well it's 9:45, so maybe I should get off now.
Yeah, it's a bit of a long one today.
Yeah,
So,
it's cool. We
alrighty.
still gotta do bottles next time. Do some Captain Morgan. And see
Yeah, let's do it in the afternoon sometime. I'll
how
be
many
down.
F-bombs I could drop. So, oh shoot, I got something coming up.
All
I
right.
got my conference rehearsal coming up. All right, see
See
you.
ya. Bye. Good luck at your conference. Bye.
Thanks.